There's a common misconception out there that says you need to be perfect to become a police officer, and that's just not the truth. Let's discuss. Before we get started, we have those gifts down in the description for you. First one's going to be the Getting Started workshop. It's going to walk you through every phase of the hiring process. It's going to get you where you need to go, and there's some hidden bonuses in there. So go enjoy. It's our gift to you. Additionally, another gift we have for you is that free coaching call. Jump on, sign up for a free coaching call with myself. We have extended hours down there now too, if the first times don't work for you. So go on there, jump on a call. We'd be glad to help you any way we can. Now, you need to be perfect to become a police officer. You need to have a perfect background. You need to have never used any substances. You need to have perfect credit. You need to have perfect fitness, perfect test scores, perfect board interview, perfect everything. That is such a lie, and none of that is true. In fact, when someone is so perfect, it makes you question if they're being honest about everything, right? So it's not always that. Now, just because someone has a clean background, that doesn't mean they're lying about it, right? Just because someone's never used substances, it doesn't mean they're lying about it. But it may lead a background investigator or a polygraph individual, polygrapher, or anyone like that to question or to double check on that and maybe press a little bit harder in some of those areas to make sure, because oftentimes they deal with people who do try to maybe leave something out, right? So a lot of times they want to make sure that this individual or that you are being honest and upfront about everything. But the fact that you need to be perfect, complete fabrication. In fact, there's no way for you to be empathetic and relate to a community in which you're serving if you think you're perfect, or if you have no hurdles in your life. How are you supposed to relate to someone going through the worst part of their day? And by the way, when law enforcement show up, that doesn't necessarily make it better. Sometimes law enforcement adds to the complexity, or sometimes adds to the stress that another individual is dealing with. However, we're always there to help. Some ways people don't recognize that at first, right? So you being there, if you can't relate to them because you've never been in a situation or a stressful situation, you might not be the perfect person, even though everything's perfect in your background, right? Which is why it's always nice to go out and to have experience and life. Now, that being said, I am not telling you to go out and mess up, because those hurdles will impact your ability to become a law enforcement and your life in general. So that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking to individuals or to other people that think, hey, I have received a speeding ticket, or, maybe I did experiment with, say, marijuana in the past. That precludes me from becoming a law enforcement. Absolutely not. Nowhere's even close. Now, certain substances are considered really big hurdles and not desired, right? I'm not going to say that they're immediate disqualifying factors. Some departments they would be. And then say if you're applying to the highway patrol and you've received a speeding ticket in the last 3 months, that might not look really good either. However, if you sit here and try to say, hey, there's nothing wrong. I'm a perfect individual, and I'm a great candidate. Yes, you probably are a very strong candidate, and you should apply. And if you need help, reach out. I'll jump on the coaching call with you, and I'll give you the direction I think that's going to work best for you. However, if you're one of the other people that says, no, I mean, I never wanted to apply because I thought this in my background or this, no, no, you can have mistakes in your background and become a police officer. Now, granted, you need to learn to articulate those hurdles and you need to explain them properly. A lot of people explain their perspective rather than the actual facts of a situation, which is all that anyone has to go off of. And I've mentioned this before. But on the other side of those things, yes, we're not looking for perfection, because perfection doesn't exist. It's not out there. We're looking for someone that can serve their community with honor and integrity, right? And serve their community well. Whether that's you being really skilled at verbal judo, where you can de-escalate a situation just with your words, great. Whether that's, you being very skilled in preventing a situation, right? You observe it before it even happens. That's even if you are very skilled at the physical aspect, where a situation has just escalated so far out of control that by the time you get there, you're required to use, defensive tools or or control tactics maneuvers to get someone under control so that they don't hurt themselves, you or another, right? But don't ever think that you're ineligible because maybe you've had some hurdles in the past. Time and distance makes every hurdle smaller. And what I mean by this is if you've had an incident in the past that's significant time away and so far from who you are now as a person, those are probably speed bumps unless you make them bigger hurdles, and you make them bigger hurdles by saying not being completely truthful about them or by misarticulating them, which is what I see the most with my coaching members. The other side of this would be the fact that if you go into it and you come into it and you think, hey, I actually have a very clean background, or I have a very, quote unquote perfect background, but then you forget about something, or maybe they bring up something that you never thought was an issue until they mention it. Hey, have you ever, taken change or money out of your parents' wallets or out of the change jar? Or, have you ever taken anything from the store even as a kid? Right? They'll go back to that level, that distance, just to see where you're going to say if anything's ever occurred. And the more you say, hey, no, I have nothing like that, the more they dig. So kind of keep that in mind. My whole purpose for this one is the fact that individuals out there do not need to be perfect to apply or get hired on as law enforcement. Now, I'm not saying that you can be a convicted felon and become a law enforcement officer. That's never going to happen, right? And not unless you get exonerated and those felony charges get removed. And yeah, there's a whole lot to it. I'm not saying never, but it's unlikely. I'm not saying that you can have a dishonorable discharge and get hired in as a law enforcement officer. That's not happening either. Now you can work and do all the work to change your discharge, and then maybe down the line, once again, I'm never saying never. But for the majority that I run into, right? The majority, and maybe that's you. You think you have some hurdles in your background, and maybe you do. But those probably don't preclude you from becoming a law enforcement officer. And in fact, the process seems so intimidating that they ask so much, and you have a polygraph and then a psych exam and board interview and a background investigation / interrogation. Really, it just comes down to being specific, not elaborating, because most of the time when you elaborate, you start telling a perspective, which is honestly not the truth, right? You start going into what I always say is overt instead of sticking to the facts, which are the truth, right? And you go down that route of perspective, and you, like I said, misarticulate that hurdle of yours or that specific incident, and it comes back and it precludes you from getting hired on with that department. But even still, even if that department says no, it doesn't mean another department won't say yes. My goal here is always to put good officers out there on the street, but I'm a realist, and one thing that I can 100% say is if you can't relate to someone, or if you've never been in a difficult situation, how are you going to relate to someone that's in a difficult situation? How are you going to be able to draw on those skills, that experience, and say, hey, I've been here, right? You'll get through this, And I'm not saying that you should pursue law enforcement if you've had severe addictions to heavy substances, narcotics, opioids. I'm not saying not to follow your path, and I'll guide you the best I can in any way I can if you ask for assistance. But at the same point in time, if you say, hey, you run into someone that says, hey, maybe let's use something simple. I'm addicted to marijuana, right? Let's say someone says, hey, I'm addicted to marijuana. And then you come in and they're having an episode, and you're trying to communicate effectively with them. And they say, you'll just never understand. And then you say, hey, at one point I was too. Think about that. Think about that rapport that you just built and how you might be able to de-escalate that situation, because you say there was a point in time where, say you could have consumed marijuana daily, right, for a few years. Then you say, hey, I realized it wasn't for me. I realized I wanted to serve individuals like you. And I wanted to prove that you could do it. And that's why I did it. And that's why you could see people say those things and immediately establish a connection with the member they're trying to serve right there in probably a very intense or stressful situation. And that could be That could be the individual is thinking about self-harm. That could be the individual is thinking about harming another. That could be anything, right? So keep that in mind. There's perfection, one, it doesn't exist. And two, those hurdles that you have you might be looking at them the wrong way. A different perspective is those hurdles were put in front of you so that you could learn from them, so that you could use that experience to help someone else in your law enforcement career. Right? You don't have to be perfect to become a law enforcement officer. Matter of fact, it doesn't exist. And even if you tried to be perfect, they'd find something, right? Or at least to you, the smallest thing would would you know be a rock or be a big hurdle for you to get over just because you thought you didn't have any. So don't ever think that. If you're someone who thinks you have too many hurdles, you probably don't. If you want to know for sure, jump on a free coaching call. I'd be glad to sit down and talk with you. As I said, there's more hours, excuse me, there's more hours down there if the original hours don't work out well for you. To piggyback on that, that online course is down there too. The Getting Started workshop, it'll walk you through every phase of the hiring process. I hope this helps, and I hope this really might make an impact on you and possibly change your life and your career focus. Stay safe, and I'll see you next time.